moment. Philip looked truly remorseful, staring down at his fingers with a scowl. Margaret tousled his ginger curls, drawing his gaze back up to hers. "That only applies to your sister, of course. You may pinch your brothers as much as you would like." She winked, and a smile tugged at Philip's lips. He raced off to find George and James, who were already on their way down the hill toward their cottage. Mamma linked her arm through Margaret's as she stepped up beside her. "What a lovely day! The heat of summer shall be upon us soon." "How are the crops?" Margaret asked in a low voice. "Has there been any improvement?" She knew not to ask such questions in front of Papa because of the worry it caused him, but Mamma always spoke with a hopeful tone. Today, however, Mamma's blue eyes darkened. "I'm afraid not." Her lips pressed together, and she looked down at the grass as they walked. Her pale lashes shielded her eyes from view, but Margaret had already seen the worry within them. Papa was still conversing with one of their neighbours near the doors of the church, and even from the distance, Margaret noted the slump of his shoulders, as if two boulders were resting atop them. Not only that, but he was ill. If he hadn't been so intent on going to church, he should have been at home in bed with a cup of warm broth. His skin had turned pale, and his eyes were bloodshot from all his coughing and poor sleep. Margaret's jaw tightened as she watched her brothers running down the hill with their torn trousers nearly halfway up their calves. If they couldn't even afford new trousers for the boys, then how would they afford to eat through the winter? Her heart thudded a shallow rhythm in her chest. She should not have left her position as a lady's maid, not even for a brief visit to her family. They needed as much money as they could possibly earn. "I will continue my search for a governess position," Margaret said. "Surely there is a family who won't know of Papa's reputation." Mamma gave a weak nod. Being a governess was a more respectable position than a maid. Shortly after her family's fall from society, which had been caused entirely by that odious Earl, Margaret had been fortunate to have been given a position with the Northcott family at Larkhall. But soon they had no longer needed her. The master of Larkhall, Matthew Northcott, had been beyond generous in helping her find work as a lady's maid afterward, but when she had heard of her father's declining health, she came home immediately to help her mother care for him and her 3 brothers. In truth, she felt rather helpless no matter where she was. As a maid, she hardly brought in enough money to significantly help her family with their needs, and being so far away, she could hardly eat or sleep because of her worry over her family. The worst of it was, her family had nothing if not their pride. The Northcotts had offered to help support them financially, but her parents had always refused. Margaret had too. It bruised her to the core to be so dependent on others. It hadn't always been that way. As she walked arm in arm with Mamma, she could recall many similar instances, but they had been walking into a ballroom instead. They had both been dressed in fine gowns. Mamma had been smiling, proud to be the chaperone of such a refined daughter. Papa often blamed himself for all they had lost. He had made the foolish decision to gamble their fortune on a business scheme involving Lord Blackwell. But it hadn't been his fault that the Earl had planned to steal it all from the beginning. It hadn't been Papa's fault that Lord Blackwell had protected himself from scrutiny by proceeding to accuse Papa of cheating in a game of cards, publicly disgracing him, even after he had taken nearly every last penny from his pocket. "Margaret, your cheeks are turning red," Mamma said with a scolding tone. Margaret gave a frustrated sigh. Simply because Mamma chose to be forgiving and